Welcome, everyone, and welcome to our special guest, Alie B. Gorrie. We met briefly in person at an Actors Access event in San Diego for like 2 seconds, I believe, but we're
Yeah.
social media friends. And she makes me wish that I didn't live on the second floor of an apartment so I could tap dance. Um, but she's a wonderful actress and a wonderful person, and I'm so excited that she's here to talk with us. So I'll get started with our kickoff questions and then I'll open the room.
Cool.
Can you tell us a little bit about your disability?
Yeah, so I have a rare eye disease that I've had since birth. It's called optic nerve hypoplasia. And I used to do book reports on it as a kid to like make people think I was cool because I didn't go, like we had a school for the blind and my state, and I went there up until like first grade, and then I started sneaking over to the school for the deaf. So they were like, okay, she doesn't need to be here anymore, like she can go to public school or whatever. She was just bored. Like I really was. I just like wanted to do more things. And so I ended up being the only kid I knew with low vision in my school. But when I would present about my eye disease, I would always say it's like if I gave you a string cheese or like a Twizzler, right? Your optic nerve is like that whole thing, and mine is like one little strand. So, and your optic nerve is what connects your eyes to your brain, right? And so my eyes just get really tired really easily, and a lot of migraines, a lot of things like that. But I've never known life with 20/20 vision. So everyone's like, oh gosh, if you could have perfect vision, would you? And I honestly think the answer is no. I have no peripheral vision really, and I it's hard to describe how I see because I don't know what it's like to I don't have anything to compare it to. Because people always ask me that. But what I do know is my visual field, which is like how much you see high, low, and side to side. Like mine looks like I see out of like a jelly bean. So if you could imagine just putting two little jelly bellies right there, like that's what I see. But yeah, that's me. Just an eye disease, and it's all I've ever known.
You should, if you ever do the report again, you should do those like toilet paper, like telescopes where you like put
Oh
the
yeah.
paper and cut out the shape of the jelly bean.
That's like a yes, and that's all I see. Yeah, and like
Yeah.
everything's like black tissue paper, and then the jelly bean is just like white tissue paper. And I'm like, yeah, how do you like those pinholes? Like, good luck, everyone.
Yeah, yeah. My mom used to come in and do talks about me, and I was born 3.5 months early, and so I weighed and was the length of a loaf of bread. So she always brought in the loaf of bread to do the talk.
You gotta have a prop. You gotta have something that people can understand. I mean, I wish you didn't, but honestly, it like gave me more cool points with people in school because like, when you're a kid with low vision, you get everything in large print. And so you're kind of like a nerd by you don't even have the choice because your math book like comes in like 4 volumes, right? Like instead of just one book, you have like 8 books and the pages are like legal size paper. So whenever I would flip a page growing up, it was like a gust of wind would go through the classroom. So I needed all the cool points I could get.
That's awesome. All right. How did you start out in this field of acting and
Yeah, that's a great question. Ever since I was little, I grew up in like my grandmother was very musical and sang Broadway songs growing up, and in my mom's car we would listen to like the Broadway Kids cassette tapes. And so I was always listening to show tunes. Um and then I would just sing along with them. I would put on shows for my family. And when I was like 6 or 7, my parents were like, "Oh, she's got a pretty big voice for such a small person." And so they put me into voice lessons, and I started auditioning for community and theater and children's theater and all that good stuff. So I don't really ever remember my life when I wasn't pursuing acting, singing, dancing in some way or another. Um, and theater is really where I feel most at home. I've done some TV film stuff, but theater is my heart and soul. And I've also, we can get into this later, but as someone with a disability, especially a vision disability, I have been told some of the most negative things from folks on the film and TV side in terms of like, if you can't see the camera, why are you pursuing this? You don't need to be here if you can't look at me like straight on, things like that. And so in theater, there's a little bit more distance between you and the audience, which shouldn't matter. But I mean, you know, in my case, and in the industry we're in, where sometimes it is based on what you look like, um, I found that I had more of a home and I felt more free and I felt more able to just go there and not worry about what I couldn't do.
Yeah, I feel the same exact way. So yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah.
What would you consider your dream job?
Mm, gosh, my dream job? I mean, who doesn't want, you know, the Broadway show or whatever, but I also right now I'm working on a one-woman show. And I would love to tour it around the whole country and like, you know, continue educating at the same time as performing. I think, you know, right now I'm currently in Birmingham, Alabama, of all places. I've lived in New York and I've been on tour and all this stuff, and I'm currently in Alabama. And I do a lot of disability work down here in the South where I think it's really needed. Um, but I want the ideal job would be a job where I am educating as much as I am being an artist. And those two are balanced because, you know, I don't think all disabled people do want to be educators. And I don't think we should, like, we shouldn't have to be, but I'm in a space where I really want to be. But I also think I have to be an artist as well, or the two, it just doesn't feel right.
I think that I'm very much the same way. Like I was always like, please ask me questions, and and so yeah, no, I agree with that. Okay. What are the top 5 things you keep in your rehearsal or performance bag?
Oh, that's such a good question. Okay, I always have a huge Stanley water bottle, you know, the big Stanley cup because I'm a, you know, whatever, millennial, whatever. Judge me. I got my big Stanley cup. I always have a notebook and a pen to write notes and also to journal. Um Obviously my script or score or whatever it is I'm using, so I guess that's 3 or maybe 4. Um and gosh, if I told you all my different magnifiers and low vision aids that I use, then that'd probably be like 10 things in my bag. But I've got magnifiers and telescopes and different glasses that I need. So my bag is full. And of course, I'm a tap dancer. You know, I've got all my shoes, I've got all that stuff. So I don't know if I could even give you 5 because my bag is huge.
Yeah. There have been a few people on here that are like, oh, I take nothing. And I'm like, you take nothing? Like I have to have my water and a notebook
Oh,
and like I
some
have
pastilles for my throat. Like I'm so basic,
exactly,
but
yeah.
like I
Like
gotta
all the
have
things,
it.
yeah. Maybe clothes, like change of clothes, yeah, all those things, yeah.
Dance clothes. Oh my gosh, yeah. Because I feel like I'm always dancing in whatever musical I do. And so gotta have it. Gotta be ready.
What advice do you have for someone who wants to do what you do?
Find the yes. Like find the yes and find the yes people. Because no matter what, if you're disabled or if you're not disabled, you're gonna hear a crap ton of no's. Um, and it sucks. Like duh, like it sucks to be told no, and it sucks to be not given opportunities that you really want. Um, but I really cling to the yeses and the yes people and like the collaborators and like look for those like-minded people in those communities. I think finding your people in this space is so important. I remember when I was living in New York and I first got connected to like some folks at like theater breaking through barriers and inclusion in the arts. I was always the only disabled person in spaces my whole life and professional theater spaces. And when I first got to make art and, you know, do plays and readings and pilots and all the stuff with disabled artists, I was like, this is everything. Like these are my people. And like, you have to find them. Like this business and what we do as artists, like community is everything. And I think it's completely like just what you got to invest your heart and soul into.
I definitely agree with that. What is your favorite part you've ever played?
You know what? It just happened actually. This past summer, I got to play Princess Fiona in Shrek the Musical, and it was such a joy. I loved it because she is not She doesn't get walked on. She knows exactly what she wants and how she wants it done. Like, she's like, this is how I'm going to be saved. Like, she doesn't even, like, everything is so like, it's going to be like this, and this is my plan, and blah, blah, blah. Like, she is so headstrong. Sometimes to her detriment, I fully believe. I mean, completely. Um, but also she has an air of like unapologeticness about who she is once she starts to let her guards down, right? Like, I'm thinking Act 2 Fiona with Shrek, and she's just like, you know, being irreverent and letting them rip, and all the really fun things that ogres do.
I mean, she's a princess that farts, so
Yeah,
that's alone in
that's
itself. Like,
it
how
was
many of us would be like totally open to just farting out in the world? I don't think.
hell yeah.
So.
The amount of little boys that came to the show and were like, Mom, that's a farting girl. Like, it was really cute. But no, I also think, playing her was so fun and such a beautiful challenge, because I think as a person like me myself, I've worked really hard to like let my guards down and be my authentic self. But she keeps her guards up for like 75 to 80% of that story. She's like, you will not know this, and like, I'm a princess and this is how it goes, and like, don't screw it up, and like, this has been my plan for my whole life, and like, no one can know my secret because I have so much shame about it. And then she gets to like, really wrestle with that. And I think there are a lot of layers to that. I think, she's not written as a disabled character, but like, I think in my experience as a disabled person definitely added to that, especially in that, like, not wanting to embrace our full identity. I mean, how many of us as little disabled kids were like, I don't want to talk about it? I mean, I certainly was. I didn't start talking about my disability. And like, I went to a school for the blind as a little kid, and like, I was in eye appointments my whole life and was at Children's Hospital, and like, I didn't want to even embrace it until I was 13 years old, and even then I was like, how dare you confront me about this? Like, I don't want to talk about it. Um, so playing her, I think it's so recent, but I just think that was a really full circle kind of moment to get to sort of step into all these different seasons of her experience that sort of mirrored and like somewhat looked like my own. Obviously, I'm not gonna like use my own stuff on stage necessarily all the time, but like, how could I not at the same time? So I don't know. It was a blast, and I got to tap dance, and who doesn't like to tap dance with a bunch of mice? It was a great time.
That's amazing. Yeah. I was like in a small town. I was the only disabled person, and I felt like I spent my whole life like trying to prove that I could do things. And it wasn't like until like my 20s that, like ableism actually like popped up. And then like I read one time like you kind of come out of the closet as a disabled person to say this
Yes.
is me and I'm disabled, where you're still like trying to hide the like things about you because you're trying to prove to the world that you can do things. And so, I think about that. And, occasionally I meet people where I'm like, well, they're not quite out of that closet yet. They're still trying to figure it out. And hopefully
Oh
one day
yeah.
they do. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Like, I think, yeah, there's a big part of that. And there's honestly, it's just an interesting parallel you made, because I'm queer as well. And like, it's funny because I feel like I came out of the closet as disabled, and that was like easier for me, and I'm like, oh, that's when I came out as queer, I was like, oh, this is not that hard. Like, I've done this before. Like, hello, old friend. Like, let's revisit what this feels like, and like this process. And it's not totally new. It's not as new as you think it is.
Yeah. All right. My last question before I open it to the floor. What is the one thing you wouldn't change about yourself?
Oh gosh. The one thing I wouldn't change about myself. Oh, I am like such an eternal optimist. Like, I can't help but look for what's good and what's next, and like, I'm very much futuristic in that way. And I'm always looking ahead, sometimes to my detriment, but I honestly wouldn't change it because I think it's what keeps me going. And I think it'd be really easy. And I know plenty of people with disabilities that are like, this sucks and life sucks. And like, I get it. Like, I really get it. Um, like, and I don't want to discredit that, but I think if I didn't have the optimism that I have, like, I don't know that I'd be here, you know? And like, so I think it's a huge gift. Some of my friends might be like, oh my God, there's Alie B. Like, for example, I'm leaving on a vacation tomorrow and I'm already planning my next one. Like, you know, like, yeah, okay, we could probably stand to be in the present a little bit more. But I think in a lot of other situations, it can be really helpful, you know, to be able to like see past the whatever of your current situation and be like, okay, but get a load of this. This thing is coming up and you're going to be fine. So, yeah, I'm like a queen of reframing and optimism, you know, and it has its negatives, but I wouldn't change it for the world.
Yeah, I'm the same way. And I think I've dealt with a lot of, if anything negative did pop up, I try to deal with it with humor versus like, and I mean, I think everybody has those moments, even if you are more of the optimist. But yeah, yeah.
Absolutely.
All right. Who has the first question for Alie B?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so I'm Michaela, by the way. Um, yeah, so I also have cerebral palsy, which is what Kelly has.
Yeah.
And I definitely resonate with, both of what y'all are talking about growing up with disabilities and how kind of accepting your disability can be um a process. And I'm curious if you had an experience that sort of, because you talked about how when you were younger you didn't really want to accept your disability, and
Yeah.
then as you got older you really embraced it. And I'm just curious if you sort of like had an experience that was the catalyst for that, or if it was
Yeah.
an age thing, or if it was just like working with other disabled people, because you talked about that as well. And I'm also curious about that. Um, you finding community and getting to work with other disabled people. But
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, that's such a good question. Thank you for asking that because yeah, I think there are some gaps that need to be filled in. Um, and yes, I had a very specific mentor. And she helped me. The date was February 20th, 2007 or 2006. And this was my voice teacher at the time. I was 13 years old. And she sat me down. We were preparing for some competition, some arts theater competition, whatever. And my dog might bark at me, so I'm so sorry if you hear a little bark. But she's looking at me like, "What are you doing, Mom?" But no, my voice teacher sat me down because I was also a kid that like I was really grateful. My parents knew that I wanted to do this, and so like I was auditioning for theater in Atlanta, and I went up to Chicago and New York to audition for like I really wanted to do this as a kid. When I did a production of Annie in Atlanta, Georgia at the Fox Theater that was going on tour. And I got it, but I was up for the lead role and the director was like, why can't you look at me? Like, what's wrong with your face? Like, why can't your eyes look at me? And I was a kid, right? And so I was so upset by it. And then there were some other situations where other directors and people in the arts were like, what's wrong with your eyes? Like, just look at me, focus your eyes. And as a little kid, you're like, I don't know. It's involuntary because my eyes will sometimes cross or shift. And it was really hard for me as a kid because I was like, why are these people yelling at me for something that I can't control? And trying to get me to look normal, whatever the hell that means. And so on February 20th, yes, Phoebe, that's my dog. She's gonna make a cameo here. Come here, girl. Um, Phoebe, it's okay. She's great.
Hi, Phoebe.
On February 20th, 2007-ish, my voice teacher sat me down and she was like, Alie B, if you want to pursue this at a professional level, like we got to talk because you're going to have to learn how to speak up for yourself. And I was like, how dare you tell me that I have to learn this? Like, it was really hard for me. And she was like, I love you and I really care about you and I want to help you. And we can talk about this as much as you want. She got me a journal and she said, I want you to start journaling. I have literally kept a journal. Y'all, I have about 30 volumes of a journal. Like I've kept every journal since that day, February 20th. I celebrate it every year. Like I get a cupcake and champagne because I call it my, it's like my advocacy birthday. Um, and she taught me, like, as a 13-year-old kid, like, if you want to be in this business, you know, she went to Juilliard, Manhattan School of Music, whatever, like, she knows her shit. And she was like, we got to work on this. Like, you have to learn how to stand up for yourself because you do have skill, but you also have to let people understand what your story is. And I was like, well, I don't want to. And she was like, well, you know, you're 13. Like, let's talk about it. So she helped me a lot. She connected me with an acting teacher, and we learned, like, I learned self-advocacy through writing a monologue, like, about my access needs. So it's like I got to use the arts to teach me the skills that I needed in the real world. And that was so transformative for me. So yeah, that's sort of the bridge that happened for me, and it continued to happen. I mean, I went to New York, and guess what happened? Like, I booked a lot of work when I first got there, and then when I started getting into rooms for Broadway shows and big national tours, guess what I heard? What the hell? What are you looking at? What's wrong with your eyes? Why can't you look at me? You know, and this is me as a 20-something-year-old. And I was like, oh my God, they're still doing this shit. Like, but you know, I had a system in place and I knew what to do. And then it turned out I would just walk in the room and be like, hey, I'm Alie B. I have low vision. So like, you let me know when you're ready to start. Okay. Like, like, and I'll start, because I'm not gonna know, like, you gotta let me know you're looking at me, you know, because I can't see you. So there's certain things like that where, like, I learned, and I'm a dancer and a tap dancer. And when I go into dance auditions, I don't switch lines. I stand in the front line right by the choreographer. And I used to be really ashamed of that. And now I'm just like, yo, I can't see, so I'm standing right by you. And they'll be like, but how do you dance? And I'm like, do you think I'd come in here if I sucked? Like I promise you, I'm here for a reason. And now, you know, it's like I work with enough people that I love and have people in my corner, so it's not as much of a thing. But it's taken a lot of practice. And like, I'm not gonna lie, if someone like tomorrow was like, what the hell, why do your eyes look so weird? Or like, why can't you look me dead in the eye? Yeah, I'd be a little upset. Like, it's that interesting thing of like, I can embrace it and advocate for myself and others all I want, but like, it's always gonna like sting a little bit. And like, that's okay. Because when you're not expecting it to be called out and it's called out, you're like, ooh, didn't see that coming. Like, it's part of me. It's still vulnerable, and like, that's okay. I think sometimes there's the thought of like, you're an advocate, you should be strong, and I'm like, yeah, and you can still have feelings. Like, what a concept.
Yeah, you can still go home and cry about it. It's okay.
It's okay.
If I had met young you, I would tell you the story. We had gone to like a state competition, like performance for theater, and my friend like performed, and he just had like a naturally like scrunched looking face. I don't know how to describe it otherwise.
Yeah.
But the judge on his notes wrote, stop squinting your eyes, and he's like, I wasn't squinting my eyes. Like, how? Like,
I'm like, I'm sorry, that's my face, dog. Like,
my face. So I mean, it even happens to people that don't have a disability. So yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you for asking that.
Yeah, and I will say, like, that takes a lot of work and dedication and power, and even just keeping a journal, because I've been trying to keep a journal for like a year now. Oh my gosh.
You can do it. You can do it.
Oh, it's so difficult to keep up with. Oh my gosh.
Hey, if you just gotta figure out how to get your feelings like out there, because like, you know, and I'm a big therapy proponent too. Like, y'all, I love my Mondays at noon. Okay, like do what you need to do to like take care of your mind and like the narratives that you tell yourself. And like, for me, a lot of that is seeing it on paper. Like, sometimes I don't even know I'm beating myself up until I write it down. I'm like, ooh, that was mean. Like, huh, where's the nice part of you? Like, let's bring her out, you know? So yeah, but that's just me. You know, you might not need that. Like, my acting mentor in New York does voice memos on the way to work and like listens back to them. Like, oof, I don't want to listen to myself talk. But like, yeah.
Yeah, I would definitely prefer to write it. I'm also big on therapy too, for sure.
Good. We'd love to hear it.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. I also had another question, which is you talked about you've gone on tour before for shows,
Mhm.
and that's something I've never done before. I don't think um a lot of people have, and I'm curious what that experience is like, especially, with your disability, because that's something I would be nervous about with
Yeah,
my
you're in
dis-
a different theater every week and you have to learn how to navigate that. Like, so I did the national tour of Seussical for a year, and I loved it. And also I had to, it taught me a lot about advocacy and like what I needed. I like traveled with my own glow tape, like and string of Christmas lights, because like I needed to see backstage and like I can't, like when it's dark, I literally can't see anything. Like I'm night blind. Which is hilarious that I'm like, oh, you know what I should do? Theater. um but I had to figure it out, and like when we get to a new venue I had to take extra time to like walk the space and like figure out how I was going to navigate backstage and like where I was going to do my quick changes, and like I have to memorize like the spatial makeup of everything, and so it just means I have to take more time in the space. And I roomed with someone on tour. A, it saves you money, and B, you never have to like walk home and find your new hotel room every night. So like I would find like my hacks, and my accessibility hacks. And of course I had my low vision like tools and supplies and stuff. But um I really just figured it out as I went. I was like, well, I got the job, so I'm gonna do this shit. And then I had to tour and figure out what I needed. And like, oh my gosh, this theater backstage, like I cannot get around. Like I need extra glow tape, or I need more light, or I need a flashlight off stage to get me from stage right to stage left, or I need a person to like literally grab my elbow and do sighted guide for me across the stage. And like, but I would have to sort of, I think as disabled artists, we do have to know what like our extra steps are. And for me, a big extra step for me in any show, in any process, is time with stage management during tech that's like not with all the other actors, because there's nothing shittier than having to be the person in every scene. Again, it shouldn't feel this way, but ableism and internalized ableism and all that stuff, like it's hard, right? When you're like, stop, hold, it's me, I can't see again, so I have to hold, right? So I schedule extra time that's not when 30 other actors are on stage, so that I can figure that shit out for myself. Now, yeah, in a perfect world, I wouldn't have to do that. But also, like, I understand I'm the only non-disabled person in this cast. And like, I'm willing, I've got to do great work. And like, whatever it's going to take for me to do, I have to know what my accommodations are and like how I'm going to set myself and the whole team up for success.
We did an interview with a stage manager so that people could watch it and learn to be comfortable for asking for something like that. Because your stage manager is going to be your best friend in a theater experience. So yeah.
You have to be close to them. And like, in rehearsal, if there are moments too, like I get, migraines, and tech can be really hard for me because light is such a trigger. And when you're on stage, like that shit's bright. And if you're doing Shrek and you're turning from princess to ogre all the time, like that shit's green. And I was like, I need to see what this is like and like spend some time in it before we just do a run of the show, and again, it's just knowing yourself and your own access needs. And I think enough time in whatever your performing field is, if it's film and TV, if it's theater, whatever, like you kind of get to know what you need. And I think it's also being really honest with your stage manager, being like, yo, my access needs might change because that's how access needs work. And like, I just need you to like, if I tell you something, like believe it. Like, that's all I ask.
Yeah, I also really love glow tape. I keep it on my canes so I can find them if I'm in like a dark room. And
Yes.
I'm currently doing improv classes with the Groundlings, and I went to a show and they had this same glow tape like all over the stage, and I was like, I matched the stage. I'm meant to be here.
Like my people, my glow tape. Oh, I love the
Like
ground.
glow
I'm
tape
so glad you're doing
people.
CrossFit.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
get it. They get it. The glow tape people. Yeah.
Mhm.
Michaela, do you have another question?
I do. You mentioned that you are writing or you wrote a one-woman show, and I was wondering if you could talk about that. And is it related to disability, or is it not? And can you just tell us a little bit about it?
You bet. So it is called Cockeyed Optimist, after the song from South Pacific, because my eyes are literally not aligned and I'm an optimist to a fault. So I was like, what a title. Let's go. But yeah, it is my story, but really through the disability lens of like finding my voice and learning how to advocate for myself so that I could advocate for other people and like continue to work as both an artist and an activist. I'm so excited about it. I'm doing it at the end of October here in Birmingham, but I'm hoping to tour it to a lot of other places. Because I think a lot of regional theaters particularly like need to be aware of how disability isn't something that we need to like worry so much about. And like that there are so many disabled artists in their midst that like can do great work. And like I just want to at least crack open that idea of like, who are you missing, and like who can you bring in and like what perspectives can you have. But yeah, it's a lot of my own personal stories and experiences of like being in audition rooms and being a kid and like learning what I could and couldn't do. And I'm just so excited to share it. I love telling stories. I share a lot about that teacher that I told you about who taught me how to write my own monologue, and I share about a lot of doctors and people in my life that have inspired me, but I also talk about like that it's really shitty sometimes. Like I don't it's not all rain, even though it's called Cockeyed Optimist, like there's some cockeyed shittiness in there too. So yeah, but it is very disability focused. And I just think more people need to understand disabled artists in theater, especially, I feel like we're getting better in film and TV, but like I'm a member of Equity, and like disabled people are like less than 1% of Actors Equity, and like that's just BS when like 25% of our world is disabled. So
yeah, one of the speeches today at the SAG Disability March was this woman was like, I went to see my friend in a play and the theater wasn't accessible for me at all. Like, and we've talked to people here because we want to build like allies and like the stage manager, and he was like, do you know how my job would be easier if there was a ramp on this theater? Like how much? And so it's like accessibility it's accessibility for everyone, especially in a theater. Like why does your house, like the value of your house, go down when a ramp is added? Why doesn't it?
Right.
How nice it'd be to move into that house with a ramp.
Yeah, come on.
Yeah.
Get in there.
Yeah. Are there any more questions for Alie?
Hi, Alie B. It's Rachel. I'm so
Hi,
happy
Rachel.
that you're on the show.
Yes, I'm so happy to hear your voice.
Yes, I know. I need to catch up with you again.
I know.
It's been a while.
Oh.
I was just curious. So I'm still in school, and
Yeah.
I have a really great opportunity to provide guidance and try to for universal design for the school, because right now they make all the sets before, I guess during the summer. I'm not exactly sure when they do it.
Sure.
And so but basically they have it all done, and then they do the auditions, and it's open to all the university students. And they don't, the sets are not usually, they're not accessible. And then if there is someone who does want to audition, it's like they're like scrambling last minute. And so I was just wondering if you had any suggestions. I'm looking, for any kind of set design, and that's a big reason why I haven't really auditioned at this school, because I'm someone who haven't had experience too much, and I don't really, you were talking about what the accommodations that you might need or things that you but I'm still learning, because I don't have that experience.
Yeah, I honestly think, Rachel, it's tricky because I know what it might be for me, and what it might be for you. But I think it's like finding that disability like think tank and hive mind that you might have at your school. Because again, like I have my own ideas from like my experience in the theaters that I've helped. But anytime I work with any theater on accessibility, like I'm always making sure that I'm not the only disabled voice in there. Like we've got to have folks from different disabled, you know, communities, be that folks with mobility disabilities, folks that have, you know, all kinds of disabilities, because I think it's just important. So maybe, I mean, it might start with you getting together with some other folks at your school who maybe you might know or might be able to get connected through through disability resources. And I know that can sometimes be tricky. But I think it's like finding a team of people and working together and figuring out like, hey, these are some things that would be really helpful. And like, here's how we can build this in from the start. But it's tricky because like I'm very similar. Like I want to like fix it all and be like, let's go, let's crush it all in one swoop. But I think it's making sure that like there's a couple of disabled voices from your school that are able to sort of get to know the space, get to know the program and like what the needs could look like, and then kind of creating that like think tank and task force together.
Oh yeah, I definitely agree with that. That's
Yeah.
something that I'm trying to do. I don't know. I've been trying to find students on campus, but
Yeah.
Since I don't, I've just been reaching out to the disability community because I do want to hear other voices. You know, I don't want to just.
I mean, you're in my club, right? Like we're
Yeah,
the
exactly.
television blind club. Like we kind of know what we need. And like, even if you don't know exactly what you need, like, you know, even through other organizations, like folks like me and like other friends that you have in the blind low vision space, like we got you and we can help you a lot. But yeah, I think it's just making sure that we like, you know, figure out, because even, you know, I work at a regional theater here in Birmingham, and like when they were moving into this new space, they were like, Alie B, what do we need to be like accessible for all people? And I was like, well, we need to bring in more people to this meeting than just me. But I can give you some places to start, and then we can, you know, meet with some other folks to kind of continue. So I mean, me and you can even talk offline, like if you have some ideas and just want me to like look at what you've got and like move forward from there. Cause yeah, it's not like our experiences are so important, but also we want to make sure that like everyone's in the mix.
Yeah, and I'm definitely part of that rare vision disability club as well.
So
And I was curious, what kind of accommodations did you find that were helpful for learning choreography? Because there are a lot of people with vision disabilities who don't have really good residual vision, so that they're able to be in the front row and follow along. So I was wondering if there might be something that, you know, you might find helpful for them.
yeah, so I do feel very lucky that when I was in college and undergrad, I was a musical theater major, and I was in the dance program as well. But I was a minor, and I had a modern dance instructor, which I was not a modern dancer. I had never taken modern dance until college when I was required to. And I was like, why are we rolling around on the floor, and why are there drums playing? What's happening? And so but I had a modern dance teacher that took an interest in me, because she was like, I want to understand how you learn, and I want to understand how I can help other students with low vision. And so it was cool as we got to kind of work together and create a system. And what I would suggest for folks who are blind or low vision and want to dance and do any kind of movement work, to find either if it might be through school, it might be if your school has a dance program, but to reach out and like find a dance instructor. I think modern and ballet are great places to start, because they're the foundation for so many kinds of dance. But like this instructor that I worked with in college, she would literally, Rachel, get me on the floor and be like, I want us to memorize what this feels like in your body, so that when you're jumping up in the air, you don't have to look in the mirror, you know, and you don't have to worry about what this looks like, because you know what it feels like in your bones. And like I had to learn dance and memorize it that way. And so in auditions, you know, even though I'm using the vision I do have to learn, I'm like, oh, I think that this is the shape she's making, and I know what that feels like in my body, so I want to go with that. Like I'm making a lot of educated guesses. But I really had to work one-on-one, and I was very grateful that I had someone who was willing to kind of like work with me in that way. But I had to learn, like I really had to sit down with this dance teacher and say like, okay, what does this feel like when I'm in the air? What does this feel like when I'm at the ballet bar? Like, and she would have her hands on my foot and be like molding my foot like it was a piece of clay, you know? And I think that has really shaped a lot of my relationship with movement. I know it's not necessarily easy, and like she was very willing because she wanted to learn how to be a better teacher. But I also know that some people are like, yeah, you can pay me a crap ton of money for that, to teach you. So I know it's not a one size fits all, but I can tell you that that is how I learned how to find my own movement vocabulary. It was through working very one-on-one with someone.
Yeah, that it seems like that is also one of the accommodations that I've heard a lot of vision disabled people, creatives use, like you were saying, extra time on the stage to learn the space. And also just time of knowing how the lighting is going to change while you're on stage. Um, and like even just learning the theater, like the rehearsal, like
Hall and
the dressing rooms. Mm-hmm.
absolutely.
Yeah, and I was also wondering, how did you end up finding an acting mentor or a dance mentor or just any, it's sometimes in the creative community, I didn't know how you go about finding mentors.
Yeah. Oh, that's a great question, Rachel. And I think it's like, I never was like, oh, I'm going to go out there and find a mentor. Like that wasn't, I wish that was my thought process, but it was really like, I'm going to be in class until I find someone that I feel like understands my world and what I'm hoping to do. And like, for me, I think a lot of us with low vision who are blind I love Zoom. Don't get me wrong. You all are great. And I'm so happy to be on Zoom with everyone. But like when I'm in a creative space, I need you to like touch me. Like I have low vision. I need you if I'm doing physical movement work, like I need you to grab my foot and place my arm. And like I have to do that muscle memory, body brain thing, right? So I think, Rachel, it's like finding people. It could be at your school, it could be in community theater. I think a way to sort of find that artistic community is just keep showing up to things and seeing like, who do I really love? Like, I'm in a writing group right now with a lot of people who are older than me. And I think they're just these fascinating women. And like, if someone is doing cool things or writing beautiful work or singing beautiful songs, I think it is okay to say like, hey, can we go to lunch? Like, I really think you're cool. Like that is how I've met so many of my mentors, is like hearing someone talk or taking a lesson or listening to a lecture and being like, wow, you're so cool. Can I buy you a sandwich? Can I buy you a coffee and like learn about you? So I know it's a very like vulnerable thing to do, to put yourself out there, but I would say if you have people in your community that you love their work, hang out with them. Just spend the time.
Did you go to college for theater or did you kind of just jump into different classes?
No, I went to school for musical theater. I went to Belmont University. Yeah, in Nashville, Tennessee. And I loved it. And I went to Cap 21 at NYU in the summers, and I learned so much there too.
Yeah, I wanted to that it's so great that there is a lot more vision disabled creatives in the community now. It's like growing up, like I didn't really know anyone. And so now like I'm just meeting so many people, and it's so exciting because there's a lot of times, and this is very, I don't know about other disability communities, but I'm very specifically in vision disability communities, a lot of parents like try to be very overprotective of their children and not letting them explore the world and discover and do movement based classes or any kind of creative arts classes because they want them to be able to have jobs. And so that's why I'm a big advocate for inclusion in the arts, and really focus a lot of like my education more like talking about it in the schools and talking about how like working with teachers and stuff, and giving them more awareness. So because you want to be more inclusive and helping parents understand it's okay, let them like explore the space.
Yes, absolutely. I'm right there with you. I feel, I work with a lot of kids with low vision across my state, and that's the one thing I tell their parents is like let them fall on their face, like that sounds awful and shitty, but like you will never figure your shit out unless you like take the floaties off, and just like get in there. And like, maybe that is too harsh, but like, I think you got to try. You got to be willing to like fall on your face every now and then.
Yeah, and I hope it's okay, but I do have another this could be for everybody, but also I just feel like it's another vision disability centric question, but
Sure.
it's something that is about character development for when you're you know, like you get a role and like now you want to build on the character and you're thinking about how does that character walk, or how would they hold their body, or what kind of like gestures would they use. And so for me as a vision disabled actor, like I've just been, I don't, there's a lot of visual things that I've not like understand how sighted people interpret it. And so for me it's a I've heard like some people say like, oh, don't worry about it, just focus on like just acting and focus on your intentions, or you know, like the emotions of it, and it'll just come naturally, which I do get. But I also think that it could also be a tool just to understand how certain gestures or positioning that sighted people understand. So I was just kind of wanted to get your thoughts about that, because I, in my class yesterday, we were talking about how different walks that people have, or
Of course.
different way that they step, and like how that communicates a characteristic. And so these are things that I didn't know. So I just wanted to add it to my toolbox. And my teacher had suggested, well, it might be nice, you know, might be something that you might want to just ask you know, classmates, like if they could just show you like how it feels in your body to hold like an annoyed stance or something, and then that way, you know, you can choose to use it or you choose not to use it, but
Yeah.
like that way you're feeling it. And I don't know, I was just wondering what you thought about it.
It's
I
a
just
really
want to throw in really quickly if I can. As far as like with me with a physical disability, I worry about that a lot too. Like especially doing improv and you have to do scene work and you're like, am I doing it right? Or we'll start out like every class, like, okay, walk like you're mad. And you're like, well, am I doing it like a character would? But then like I remember there was one day where we had to walk like the room was jello. And I thought, well, even though I'm disabled and I have canes, like I would still do it the way that I do it. And so once I kind of got in that mindset, that helped. But I'm just saying that, like, I think a lot of people, I mean, I can't speak for Michaela, but I definitely get in my mind about, am I doing the right body movements? Am I doing the right scene work? But then I also have to realize that, like, I can't, you know, I can't be, you know, Meryl Streep doing it. I have to still be Kelly doing it. So that's a good one. And I'm going to pass it off to Alie because I'm sure she has great tips for that as well. So
I love that you said that, Kelly, because I think, yes, you're playing a character, but like you're also like a human with a disability. And like no matter what, you're going to bring that lived experience to whatever character you play. And like, what is your experience of certain things, right? You know, what like when you are having a shitty day, how does your body feel? And I think it may look like more, Rachel, even as you're kind of exploring that, is like, and maybe journaling is not your thing, or recording voice memos, but really like taking some time, and it may be even through like meditation or certain things, but like just like trying to focus on like, okay, I'm this emotion is like blazing through my head right now, right? Like I'm a big old feeler, right? So like if I'm mad, like my whole body's mad, okay? But like what mine is might not look like what someone who has 20/20 vision looks like. And like that's okay. It's still an expression of the same story. It's just in my disabled body, you know? And so I think it's really kind of learning, and meditation and yoga has honestly helped me a lot, just understand like my own body and my own instrument, and like and I think it is kind of figuring out like, what is this in my world? And like I have different cues. I can't see facial expressions, okay? Like I can't. If I go to a Broadway show, it's just a bunch of blobs, and like that's okay. Um but I do know that when I'm angry, I feel tightness in my back and shoulders. My hands are in a ball, and I am like breathing really loud, you know? Like Like there's certain things that like, but I've had to gain a lot of awareness because I'm not here to like, I can't mirror you. Like I can't do that because I can't freaking see you. So I think it is taking that time to like figure out what things are for you and like how your body responds in certain situations. And like, I mean, it took me a long time to realize how much my body and my emotions, are like besties. And, you know, finding physical ways in to acting. I mean, that's like truly like my approach is a purely physical approach, which you're like, how the hell is that? You can't even see. But it just through things like yoga, meditation, I mean, like different movement classes and just working one-on-one and like doing actual body work. Like I'm talking like, I mean, I've been into some weird stuff lately. Okay. I'm like, let's go Reiki and massage and all that stuff. Like, let's go. But it is just figuring out like, how does your body respond in those situations? Because yeah, you're acting, but like you have to come from you. Like you are not that other person. Like you are freaking you embodying another story. But at the end of the day, it's your body. And like, you got to figure out what your body feels and responds. And like, that's gonna ring true. But I think it is just taking that mind body and emotion body kind of connection and like thinking through your own kind of emotional experience and like taking a moment to like take a mental snapshot of what that feels like in your bones.
So you've
I
never
think
had to do the mirror exercise?
oh hell yeah. And I'm like, I can't see you. So like this is so dumb.
I had to do
Yeah.
it. They had me sit on a chair, and at one point we were like doing this, and I was like, "How would you feel if I fell over right now?" Like,
Yes.
just
Yeah, no, I totally get what you're saying. I definitely agree with everything that you're saying. I do everything like experientially, just feeling like how that does feel in my body and how the characters, when I am finding out like how that character will walk. I guess maybe I didn't really I feel like maybe I'm not explaining it very well. So but I just sometimes, I guess for me, like, I just think it's interesting to have that understanding of like how visual cues are being interpreted by sighted people. And I guess that's what I meant as like having that as part of my toolkit, not taking away like how I experience or how I convey it, like with my disability. Does that make sense? I hope I'm explaining.
No, I get it because you know what, Rachel, like there will always be a little part of me. Like, for example, I'm about to do this one woman show, right? And I'm like going deep and like bearing a lot of my soul. But like my eyes might be moving all over the place and shifting all around, you know? And like that's involuntary. I can't control it. And there will always be a tiny part of me that's like, God, people are gonna think I'm not a good storyteller. Or like, shit, like people are gonna like I'm not coming off or I don't appear as devoted or committed or certain. Like my eyes are shifty. So I'm gonna look like I'm shifty. And no one's gonna connect to the story because of the way I look. Like I will always have that demon in the back of my brain. But that is also like my own internalized ableism bullshit that I have to work through. Like, excuse my language. But yeah, so I hear you in terms of like how is this being perceived by sighted people? And I have that part of me too. And like I also have to look at the other part of me that's like, screw that. Like, who cares? And it's hard. It is a battle. And like it doesn't mean I don't ever hear that voice because I do. I just have to consider like, yeah, but my story is important. So period. You know?
Yeah, and I think that was one of the best advices that you gave me as far as like with my, because I also have nystagmus. And
Yeah.
so during my like my self-tape, that was like so great to put that in my slate. Like it's just like I just say, I have, as part of my vision disability, I have involuntary eye movement, but I think that really adds unique quality to characters, like it's
Oh
just
yeah. Like live your truth. Yes, exactly.
do you
I'm so glad
mention your do you mention your disability on like your resume or anything at all like that before you go into a room?
So that's an awesome question. I didn't for a really long time. And then in the theater world, even though it's like so against the ADA and all this, like, people be like, what the hell's wrong with you? Like, why can't you look at me? Blah, 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 blah. Like people are just assholes sometimes. And it's in my show. Come see it.
I will.
But But yeah, people are assholes sometimes. And I straight up, like, especially when I was getting auditions for like Broadway shows or big national tours, and I was like, I was finally in these rooms and people were still being assholes. I was like, hey y'all, so like I have low vision, I can't see you, but I'm having a blast and I can't wait to share you this story with you, you know? And like, I would literally sit in a room, or I'd say, will you let me know when you're ready for me to begin? Because a lot of actors walk into rooms and just immediately start their audition and people aren't even looking at them. I didn't know that until someone told me, you know? And so I was like, I need a verbal confirmation when you're ready and I'll start, you know? So sometimes I would say things like that. If I wasn't in the mood to self-advocate, that's fine. I always have it on my resume. And it's not the first thing you see. It is the first special skill I have. So it literally says special skills like legally blind, low vision, rare eye disease, incredible. Like something like, you know what I mean? Like it literally just says it all. And then it's like horseback riding, impression, you know, like it's like all my other bullshit after that. But like, I think it's a special fucking skill, you know, because like there's a lot of shit I can't do, but like it also like gives a window into a lot of things I can. So that's that.
Yeah, on mine, I think I wrote it like I'm an actress with cerebral palsy, like, and I'm excited to hopefully do some out of the box thinking in this acting world with you. And if you need me to use another kind of mobility device, because I always wondered that, like, if I'm going in for a period piece, like, how do I let them know these don't have to be with me? I can use, so that was kind of how I added that in there. But, you know, I also wanted to be like, you know, maybe you should think outside of the box. Like,
and it really depends on the
great.
audition. Yeah. Like it depends on the audition. It depends on the creative team. Like I choose when to talk about it, like out front, and like when to just like lead with it and when to just like drop it in my resume and be like, let's see what y'all think, you know? So it really, it's all depending on where I am that day.
How do you experience, like, if you have to do cold reads? Do you
Oh,
have
I don't.
any?
I absolutely
Okay.
don't. Hell no. That's how I experience them. I send casting directors and like, I feel like forever, I mean, I haven't had to do a cold read since like a stupid acting class. I don't do a lot of commercial audition. Like I'm so much more team theater than team film and TV. But even when I am doing film and TV stuff, I'm like, yo, I gotta have at least 2 days with this before you see me. Like that's my thing. Like, and if that can't work, then like work with you some other time. Now you know. And I feel like my mentor in New York, who she's so great and she was so good and like tough on me, but in the way that I needed. And she always told her students, she was like, y'all, we get what we tolerate. And so it's a harsh thing, I think, to hear, but it also makes you think like, am I trying to like put myself in a system that's ableist? And like, I don't, that's so not okay. like, I don't know. So I don't cold read. That's my answer. I hate that I'm so negative there, or not. I mean, I don't hate it actually. I am embracing that I'm so negative because I know my limits as someone with a disability. I just say, no, sorry, give me 2 days. I'll get back to you. And if that loses me a job, it's probably not someone I wanted to work with.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of people like they'll ask like if they should come into a class or like an audition when they have a disability. And I'm like, no, I'm gonna show up, and then if they have a problem with it, I'll go find someone higher up to do
Period.
it.
Or find another teacher, you know?
Yeah.
I have yet to really find a great film and TV mentor, actually, because so many of my teachers are like, if you can't see the camera, I can't work with you. Or if you can't see these sides, and like, if you like, I've just had a lot of pushback in that world, and it's very disheartening, but who cares? I love theater. It's fine. But I mean, I wish I didn't have as much pushback. I mean, like, would I love acting for camera if I didn't have so much like shitty people to deal with? Maybe. But I also, you know, it used to hurt me so badly when people would say like, if you can't see the camera, I can't teach you. And then I was like, well, I don't want to learn from you then. Like,
and that seems so crazy to me because typically you're supposed to ignore the camera. And like like, you know, hearing your story, I'm like, let me know if you want to be in a film because I'll go and help you. I can totally figure it out for you. Like,
Well, it's so interesting, you know, and I've worked on some, you know, movies and TV shows and stuff, but it's just, I found the most weirdness in that area. And I'm just like, well, then I don't want to be in that area. Like, you know, it's just, it's very much like, I also like have enough agency as an artist that like, I'm going to go where people are going to want to create and work together and build great stuff together. And like, I have yet to experience that there really. I mean, unless I'm creating my own stuff and then yeah, sure, whatever. Um, but you know, I'll stick with theater for now. And like, you know, maybe one day. But yeah, go where you feel celebrated and go where you can also celebrate you. Like, yeah, I get very passionate. So
no, I agree with you.
Yeah, I feel a lot of pressure that I have to memorize something very quickly. To be either a part of the project or to even just audition, and then that can't really do my best work because
Yep.
I'm memorizing so quickly that I'm not really getting it into my body, and so I spend a lot of the time maybe during the audition like just trying to remember, okay, what is it that, and then I might just do a bunch of improvising.
Yeah, and that's you gotta set yourself up for success at the end of the day. Like it's your time and you need to spend that time like not apologizing. Like you need to spend that time taking up as much space as you can. What a concept.
Yes.
Yeah, that is honestly for that is like that. I think one of the challenges that I've heard a lot of not just myself but other people with disabilities, it's like we're so used to being having so much ableist thinking around us that taking up space is something that sometimes we don't even know how to like claim because
Yeah.
we're pushed aside so much. And I see
Girl,
that a lot of times in schools.
it's taken me a lot of therapy, and that's okay. Ugh, this has been so good, y'all.
Oh, I do have another question. I'm sorry. I was wondering, because Kelly is a great being in her improv classes, and I like doing improv as well. And but although I was wondering, do you have any what suggestions for access means for adjusting like improv games or anything that has helped you in improv classes?
That's a great question. So I was a big UCB girl when I lived in New York. I did all the levels at UCB. And I really just had people audio describe for me as much as possible. But most of the improv games that we played, like, were not super sight-based. Like, I'm trying to think of some that were. And if they were, I luckily had teachers that were like, well, like, screw that, let's do something else, you know, like, but again, I think it's also being really upfront with your access needs ahead of time. And you know, Rachel, if you're ever in like New York, take an intensive, you know, like see, like, I think it also took me getting into the improv classes and seeing what my access needs would be. And like, you might have to take a 101 level class where you're like, well, that was a shit show. But like, I learned what I needed and I learned what games are really physical. And like, if there was some like pass the energy game across the circle, like blind people can't play zip zap zop. Are you kidding me? You know, I think there's less and less of that the more if you pick a school that's like a UCB or a Groundlings or something that like there's such a method to their madness and they have textbooks and things like that. So you can like, I read the whole UCB textbook before I took class there because I was like, I got to learn this. Okay. And understand like what I'm getting into. And if this feels really vision based, then like I'm out. But also there's a great group in New York, Rachel, because I did improv with Haben Girma, who is deafblind. And I can send you a documentary about doing it with her. And like any great improv teacher should be able to adapt. Like it's literally a sport. I call improv a sport. It is like a sport about saying yes. So like I would think if you take it any great improv school, like they're gonna yes and you. And if they don't, then that is BS. Like, but I'll send you some stuff and we can talk offline about it. But I definitely think with improv, it's like so much of it you're working and creating on the spot. So like you get to make it the access haven that you need it to be. And if you're, for some reason, exercises aren't working, like, talk with the teacher, but I think they're going to know how to help you. They're total yes people.
And in my experience, you're not going to be the worst or biggest problem in the class.
No, hell no. Because you're like already a trained actor that wants to be there.
Yeah.
Like a lot of people come to their intro level one-on-one or one-on-one classes, and they're like, I'm in the business world and I need to learn how to talk better, and you're like, okay, Timmy, like, let's go. So I think you're going to be the least of the there's no way that your access needs are going to be the big issue in the class.
Yeah, and I also really enjoy going on Clubhouse and doing those improv rooms on Clubhouse. They're really awesome.
Oh, that makes me happy. Does Clubhouse still exist, y'all?
Yeah, it does, but I like it for like, again, there's a lot of comedy improv workshop classes, and especially for voice acting. They have a voice acting improv one, and also they have still their casting director rooms and theater writing rooms and screenplay writing rooms. So I really enjoy, those kind of different spaces.
Good. That's awesome. That makes me really happy.
Are there any other questions for Alie B before we let her go get ready for her Disney cruise?
Well, Alie, I didn't know if you would like to share about your voice music camp, right? It's during the summertime, and I always forget the name of it, but it's
which one? I teach, Rachel, I teach like all day, every day. I'm so tired.
No, it's the one that was the vision disabled one for kids, and I know it's during the summer, and it's like voices of songs or songs
for sight.
Songs for sight. Yes, I knew it had songs in it somewhere.
Yeah. No, it's really just a camp for all kids with low vision. They don't have to be good at music. But that's just the name of the organization that I started. It's for kids in the South, but we all come to camp, and it's truly just a time for kids with low vision to all be together and hang out and go swimming and do karaoke and write music and like just have fun. So I started a program for kids with low vision when I was about 15, because I once I was in regular public school, I didn't know anyone like me, and I thought that was stupid. So I reached out to my eye doctor and I said, I want to start a program and I'm going to raise money in my town and do it. And then it became a big fundraiser that happened a couple times, and we raised a good amount of money, and we've had camps for about 12 years now. So, even when I was in New York, there was camps going on, even if I couldn't make them, which is really cool. But yeah, so there is some music elements, and now we've started, audio description and all of the shows at the theaters where I work. And like, anytime I work as an actor, I make sure that like there are accessible performances, because I'm like, I can't turn that part of me off, So,
Kayla, do you have any last questions for Alie?
Well, to go back to, because I actually was gonna ask about that, because earlier you mentioned the South and how you feel like there needs to be more like work done
yeah.
in more rural areas, I guess. And I don't know, I'm from the South myself, and I also like went to public school growing up, and like y'all talked about, like I was also like the only disabled person in my class, like because I was in regular classes.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I think that's just that's interesting, and that's really cool that you started that. But yeah, I think I was gonna kind of ask about, like, well, I don't even really know what my question is, but just about like the South specifically, I guess, is interesting.
Yeah. It's one of the reasons, I came back down here during the pandemic because, living in New York City and losing all of your artist jobs, it doesn't make sense. So I came back to Birmingham, where I'm from, and I was like, this will be temporary, whatever. I'll just ride this shit out and move back to New York. But what I found is that like we're a lot further behind in like disability justice here. Like we accommodate, we're nice. We have ADA requirements that we meet. Like we do all the things that the law requires us to do, but we don't really do a lot more down here. And I just was noticing, I was like, why does this feel like it's like in the 90s? Like, and that's okay. Like we're growing and we're getting better. But I also found in New York, like I'm at a community of a ton of disabled artists and people advocating for change. And in the South, like there aren't a lot of, or at least where I am in Birmingham right now, there aren't a lot of me. Like there aren't a lot of people focusing on inclusive arts experiences for disabled people, not just audience members, but artists as well. And I was like, wow, do I want to be one of 100 people doing this work or one of one, and actually be able to see and track and measure change. And so it's one of the reasons I'm still here. Now, I don't know if I'm here forever. But it is one of the reasons I'm here. And what's great is now I have a stable enough life here that I can go away to another theater for a couple months and do a contract, and I can go like it's okay, and I feel like I have a grounded home base and a house to come home to, which I'd never had before. So yeah, cost of living doesn't suck either. But also it's the work needs to be done here more, and like there needs to be more nudging. Whereas like in New York, I feel like I was like in a competition with people to make things accessible, and I was like, why are we competing for good? Like I don't understand this. And here it's like people are like, oh, let's team up, like let's be a team, and I like that attitude, so I'm still here.
There's a group on Twitter that's all for like advocacy of the disabled and helping the disabled in the South that I came across, and I thought,
send it to me please.
Okay, yes, I will. And I thought, like, what does that have to say? I grew up on the West Coast my whole life, but I do visit the South now because my boyfriend is from there. And there is sort of like more of like a weird, his family has 2 blind people. Like, I'm disabled, I'll go in and help his grandma in the kitchen, but there's still this mindset of his grandma of like, bless her heart, or what a
or like
life she has. Like, even though she knows me and she knows I'm amazing, she just has that mindset. Or you'll go, especially because there's a lot of older things in that part of the country, you'll go and they have like the historical past so that you can't get into a store, if you're in a wheelchair or something. Or one time I was sitting at a store and these like Southern white ladies were complaining because this baby was crying, and then they realized it was severely disabled, and they're just like, you just don't know what life, what hardships the people have, and you just got to pray for them. And I'm like, you do realize I'm sitting here and you're talking
right here.
So yeah, it's definitely something I've noticed, or like even one time my nephew is half Black, and they looked at me and my boyfriend and thought we had adopted him, like, oh, because she can't have children. And then it was like, once they realized he wasn't ours, they were like so appalled, and it was like, okay, like,
I know
this is getting weird. So yeah,
like my own, and I was raised by parents that let me do whatever the hell I wanted to try, so like I have nothing but respect for them. But even them are like, oh, our daughter has that vision issue, and I'm like, y'all, I'm an advocate for disabilities. Like, I think it's a little more than a vision issue, but like, whatever time period, age, it is what it is, but it does make me laugh, because I feel like everyone in the South is like, she can't see, and it's like this big whisper, and it's like, it's really fine. Like, your politeness is making it actually worse.
exactly. Yeah.
So yeah, it is what it is. But like, I actually feel like I can make more of a change that I want to see in places like the South.
Yeah, I think it's funny you said that too, because I was raised by my grandmother, and she's like Southern, but she's also like, well, now she's probably could be considered disabled, but she's, for the most part, she's non-disabled. And so, and she's, of course, my grandmother, so she's older. Like, there's a generational gap. And so there's, of course, been times where I'm like, Mom, you can't, like, nobody says that, like, or like, even just like, when growing up, like, I always used to say handicap because like that's what everybody would say. And then as I got older and like was around more disabled, but like there's nothing wrong with the word handicap, but then I realized like it's kind of gauche, and so I was like, okay, well, let's say disabled now, because like handicap sometimes sounds like weird. So I don't know. It's interesting being like, okay, well, like me growing up and kind of coming a little more north, I'm in DC, so I'm a little more north now, but and kind of being around more disabled people, and then going back and seeing like, okay, like there's a lot that could be different, like socially, but then also even physically. Like Kelly, you were saying like there's stores you can't go into and stuff. I think that is a thing with like the South too, like even just like structurally and geographically and
We got
physically.
our work to do. We got our work to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, and even I grew up in a small town. My mom had to get the schools to build ramps.
Yep.
Like, I don't know if I've told this story. Oh, maybe my mom and I, when we talked about, but in 6th grade, I had hip surgery and I was in a wheelchair and I needed a handicap stall. And the only one they had in this very old school building was in the men's room. So they had planned for me to knock on the door and tell all the boys to leave. And my mom was like, no, you're building a handicap stall in the girls' room. Like you're, like, so even, I went to a middle school where I had to climb 12 flights of stairs a day because that was the only option, and, it's crazy to think that I grew up, but I feel like, kind of the small town, the South, there are these smaller towns and that kind of thing.
Sure thing.
Then they kind of get away with it. Because honestly, there were other disabled people in town, but they were immediately put in the special ed classroom.
Yep.
And they went home, and you never saw them. Where like my mom was a single mom, so she took me everywhere, and we had to figure out how to get me around the town. And so I think that's kind of some parallel similarities to like versus city life in the South.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I know from my friends who are in the South with vision disabilities, or it can be very isolating in the sense because they always have to rely on family and friends to get around because the
Public
transportation
transportation blows. Yeah.
yeah, or even if there is a paratransit, it might just go into like a very small area. Yeah, it can be very challenging, and if that's the only way you can get around, I mean, you're tied to someone's schedule of family and friends, and it just can feel your independence, and it can drain on you mentally too on sometimes on people.
You are correct. That is my next problem to solve. I'm just kidding. I will not solve it by myself. But I have so many low vision friends, and it really just screws with mental health to be like, I'm 30, I'm 40, and I can't, like, it's Friday night and look where I am alone, like it's really isolating. It's tricky, but it's there's always more work to do. That's what I'm gonna say. There's always more work to do.
I always make the comment that if I'm ever in like a position of power, like if I become like, I'm going to make bathrooms like more accessible and more of a human right. Like it's just my whole platform's gonna be like, let's make bathrooms better. Like,
yep, absolutely. You take bathrooms, we'll take public transit. It'll be great.
Yeah. Michaela, what are you gonna take on?
Oh my gosh. I think, yeah, my biggest thing is public transportation too. I was gonna say too, like, that's the reason why I moved, mainly because it sucks to say, but like y'all are saying, like, I can drive, but with my disability, it gives me so much anxiety. It makes me so nervous that like I have way too much anxiety to drive. Like driving anxiety is already bad, but then it's like I don't know, then I'm like thinking about my disability. I can drive, but it makes it more scary, and it's just like,
is it worth it?
Yeah, and yeah, it's really not. So I now I just use public transportation, but like y'all are saying, like it's not really accessible. Public transportation is not really accessible in the South, like it is in bigger cities.
It's not even very accessible here. Like I think I shared a post on the Instagram for this podcast. Like you need to think it's not just about accessibility, it's about making easy accessibility. Like if I get on a bus, the bus driver has to like move people out of a chair, or if you're in a wheelchair, they have to move everyone out. Like, why isn't there a system where you just roll on and you're in place? Or like, if I rode the train, they had to pull out, I had to go to a special car and they had to pull out this like platform for me to walk on. And like, you know, and even then you're like, I'm on a train and it's moving, like, how do I go? Like, I think going to the bathroom is a huge issue for disabled people and travel. Like, when I flew alone, I used to fast before flying because I was like, how am I going to get to a bathroom without falling? Like, so I think there's all kinds of issues, even if you're in a city or even on airplanes. Like, I know I've met people that are like, I can't fly because the doctor won't, you know, give me a catheter for that length of time, or I can't fit on there with my wheelchair, you know? So there, I mean, even no matter where you are, unfortunately, they haven't figured out the accessible disability. So
Yeah.
And I will take on making gyms accessible.
Yes, work.
Because whereas we're moving to more touch screens and everything, my independence of using a gym has significantly diminished, and now with my vision has changed a lot, I'm not able to go around to the different weight machines like I used to. So and I don't have the economic finances to have a personal trainer every time I want to go to the gym. So yeah, I think accessibility in gyms and making more ADA advocacy in that, I'll like take that part on.
Cheers, y'all.
all right, thank you so much, Alie.
Thank
Yes,
y'all so
thank you.
much. It's been so fun to hang out, and let's connect and stay connected.
Yes.